Good morning, everybody. Please join me in lighting the chalice. The words are in the order of service. We light this beacon of hope, sign of success for the meeting and celebration of the life we share together.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back to winter, I think. Is this crazy? It's not supposed to be like this. Your order of service says that I'm Reverend Charlie Tyler. I'm not. My name is Paul Weiser. I serve on the board of the UUCL, that's Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Low Country. And so I'm pinch hitting for Charlie today. I'd like to start off in reading something written from Gwen Matthews as a welcome. Excuse me. Feel that each breath, each inhale, exhale, we are living, breathing, and connected. We are the whole, complete, beautiful selves that we were born to be. Feel that in your bones, in your muscles, in your heart, and in your blood. This is the extraordinary you. The you who was born for this time, this place, this moment. Feel that, the struggle, the worry, the pain, the loss, the grief. It is still you. You are still whole, complete, beautiful, extraordinary. Now feel that. We have a bit of a tradition of welcoming our guests and recognizing them so we can tell who you are and make sure that we get a chance to talk to you. So I'd like, if you are willing and able, and visiting for the first or second time, to stand now, tell us your name and where you're from, maybe where you live now. So over in this section, do we have any visitors here, first or second time? No, it's too cold to come over. In the middle? Yes, right there.
I'm a newcomer, and this is my first time. My name is Janet Marino. I live in Sun City now, and I come from New Jersey.
Am I missing anybody here? No? How about over in this section? There we have some visitors.
Hi, my name is Brandy Smith. I'm Ron Smith's daughter, and I brought my two sons as well. This is Noah, and this is Aiden. And we're visiting from Atlanta. Thank you.
And in the back.
I'm Tina Pitts. I live in Rose Hill, and I'm raised overseas all
Welcome. Happy to have you here. Okay, on to announcements. First of all, we will not be having any talk back today, so we can spend time with family. So no talk back today after the service. A note from Kathleen Zeiser. The Social Justice Committee has a handout available in the vestibule regarding the legislation in South Carolina that will go towards allowing gun owners to carry handguns openly and concealed in most public places, who the required state permit of the training currently required without the current requirements. So please encourage people to take one so that they may be aware this information has been provided by the Low Country Moms Demand Action. Just a shout out to Music on Malfris, this fantastic program that we have here. There's going to be a concert on Friday, April 21st. Joe Jenks, he's an international touring musician, award-winning songwriter, celebrated vocalist, known for his performances of musical beauty, social consciousness, and spiritual exploration. So that's one you don't want to miss. There's a program called Centering Our Faith Conversations. We continue to have our monthly discussions called the Centering Our Faith Conversations, formerly all about the eighth principle. These conversations are being led by Ann Harrison. The next one will take place on Saturday, April 8th in Bluffton at the home of Patricia Friedman.
That was yesterday.
That was yesterday. So how was it? Fantastic. All right, well, we're done with that announcement. Path to Belonging is another program that's run by Ann. For those of you who are new to, and this is also in your handout, so you can read this again, but she wanted me to stress this. For those of you who are new to UU or who have been around a while and are considering becoming a member of UUCL, you may be interested in attending our Path to Belonging classes. Now, this isn't tomorrow, right? No. They will be starting next Sunday and will be held on the following 3 consecutive Sundays, April 16th, 23rd, and April 30th. That's directly following the talkback. Each class will begin at 12:30 and end by 2 p.m. The classes will be led by Reverend Charlie Tyler, the real one, not me, and Ann Harrison, our Director of Religious Education. The classes are designed to help you learn about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist and to provide you with the tools needed to make a clear decision about membership at UUCL. If you're interested or would like more information, you may contact Ann Harrison at any time. That's an open, any time. And that's Ann. Okay? Okay, let's see. We have a request by Carol Stevens to make an announcement. Carol?
Thanks, Paul. This congregation has had a relationship for some time with the mosque in Savannah. And some time ago, when George Canick and I were at one of the mosques, we were invited to come back, that we should go back at the end of Ramadan. And Ramadan ends on April 21st, and they have the Eid al-Fitr, which is the meal that breaks the fast. And we are invited, so anybody who is interested in visiting a mosque, seeing what that is like, experiencing a service, you're more than welcome to come. I have a sign-up sheet in the vestibule. And the thing you need to know is that the service is a morning service because it's breaking the fast, and we need to be there sometime between 8 and 8:30. And the earlier the better, because the parking gets kind of sparse later. So can I have a show of hands of how many people think they might be interested? Oh, wonderful. So there still is a good deal of interest. Please see the sign-up sheet, and I'll give you my phone number if you have any questions or issues, and I'll ask David to put that in the newsletter for next week. My phone number is 828-421-7928. Thank you very much.
Just a note that I just received from the art group here from Lane Palmisano. Any artists wanting to change their art piece may do so at this point. It's Easter, and we're looking for a new beginning, so just a follow-up on that. Now, Gordon would like to, there he is.
I have sort of a half smile. Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, usually my voice carries with microphone. What I would need to talk to you about is this. This is our pledge drive. This is the fuel that makes our engine run. And I've done this before. I've been part of the pledge drive before, several times. And I have to say, we have really fallen short of our goal. You see, our goal is 156, and through today, we are at 65%, or 103,000. So we're 53,000 short of our goal. And you are the only people I have to talk to about it. And so we need you. We really do need you to come through. And when Fifi, all of you know Fifi, Fifi has purple stripes in her hair. She distinguishes herself that way. And she's a fairly new member of the church. And one day she stopped me and she said, "Gordon, are these all the members we have?" And I said, well, we're trying to grow. We're really making an effort to try to grow. And we're making a concerted effort to have more members. And I have to tell you, this year, and I had a chance to have a little bit of a hand in this, we have put together, I think, because I've been on several boards, we have the strongest board that we've ever had in this church. And I've been on the board several times. And I think we just have a wonderful board. And they are making a concerted effort to increase our membership. And when you increase the membership, you have more money and you can do more things. And so that's what we're working on. We have Ashley Trexler, who has expertise in marketing. And more importantly, we have Susan Crow. Is Susan here today? She's home making plans. So anyway, two people that have experience in this area, and they both are working with the board to really increase our presence in both Hilton Head and Bluffton and a little bit of the surrounding area. They have a marketing plan that costs some money. And that's mainly why we have an increase in our budget this year, and other than just normal increases that are needed. So I'm asking us to give more money. That's always the hue and cry and always the hardest thing to do. Please give more money. And so I'd like to kick it off and say that I'm increasing my pledge this year by 1/3. And so this is a one-time, at this point, maybe it'll become permanent, a one-time increase in my pledge to the Unitarian Church. So I need all those out there, and there may be a few that are watching us that have not turned in their pledge cards. Maybe there's some people here in this audience that have not turned in their pledge cards. So we need all those pledge cards turned in. We really need them. We need to know, because we're making financial commitments with this marketing plan, and it costs money. And they've gone out on a limb and said, we can do this, and we're doing it. And you're going to see us on TV in different places. We're just about 60 days into parts of the new marketing plan. If you go online and look at our new website, you'll be impressed. We have professional help. Ashley, who's looking down now. So we're going to make our mark. People are going to know more about us in this community. Think how you all got here. You just sort of heard about us and came. Some of you came from churches you were already in, Unitarian churches. You already understood what we're about. We are different, we're unique, we're special, and it's a good place to come. We love coming here. People are friendly and we like you, and we want more of us to come. So we're working on that very, very hard. And we need some money to help us pay for these commitments we're making for ads that we're going to be running, TV ads especially. And we've got a selective market. And so they use the term fencing. We're fencing various groups at different times. and so that we're not wasting our money and advertising a great distance away from Hilton Head and Bluffton. So I need your help, and I need us to take our pledge and think about adding to your pledge. You can go back and correct it. You can add more to it, and we need to. So I'm increasing my pledge by 1/3 because I know we need the money. And I could go on and on. I use Fifi as an example. You're all an example. Jim Lemke's not here today, but I've had most jobs in the church, including building maintenance. We used to have to go up there and change those light bulbs. And then we had a pole with a suction cup on the end. And we went all the way up that big ladder in the back. And we'd get up there and we'd get lucky and we'd get the bulb loose. We'd bring it down and change them. And just as soon as you get 3 or 4 replaced, you come in the next Sunday, there are more. So anyway, Laura McFadden, who was our president a couple times ago, yeah, she wants me to speed it up over here. I don't bend your ear very often, but this is really, really special. This is the fuel that drives our engine. So reconsider your pledge, see if you can't add to it, and if you know anybody who hadn't turned their pledge in, please ask them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you to the real Gordon and the fake Charlie. I'm also real. I'm Dick Hood, member of this congregation, and I will be conducting the Easter celebration that we're having today. I'm going to talk a lot about the past today, and I thought maybe for the opening words, we would try something that probably most of you have done in the past, but you have not done since you've been here. And that is, we're going to have a very brief liturgy. And that means that I am going to say something, and then you're going to respond, "We light the flame," meaning the chalice. Let's try it. For holy days on which we recall the old stories,
we light the flame.
For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past,
we light the flame.
For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge,
we light the flame.
For gathering today in this sacred space,
we light the flame.
For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for the future, to be alive in the present.
We light the flame.
Amen.
Amen.
Our opening hymn this morning is number 270. Please rise as you're willing and able.
And now is the time in our service where we share our joys and concerns in the hopes that our joys are amplified and our concerns are somewhat diminished. So if you have a joy and or concern, please come forward, take a stone from the table, give us your name and a brief story of your joy and or concern, and then place your stone in the cairn. Please, no announcements or political statements. And I'm going to start with a joy. And you still carry in your hearts. And now if you will join me in reading the affirmation. It is number 484 in the back of your hymnal. To live with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars and birds, to babes and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony.
Okay, good morning again on this Easter, Passover, lovely day. This is sharing from abundance. And I know when I got up this morning, I didn't realize how cold it was. It was cold and rainy, and I just went to the kitchen to find something warm to eat, and I had a lot of things to choose from. The problem is not everybody has a lot of things to choose from. Some people have nothing to choose from, and that's why they use a Sandalwood Food Pantry. And that's why we donate for many, many years to Sandalwood Food Pantry. People need food and they need encouragement now, and the food pantries are wonderful for giving this out. So when you come next time, if you don't have it now, please leave it at the back of the sanctuary. And I'm asking you to give. I asked you before to give lima beans, but I don't think that's flying anymore. So I can't believe it. Ask and you will receive. George, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now we have to sustain our community. In addition to what Gordon was saying, and which is a separate thing for sustaining our community on weekly. Okay, it takes a lot of money, as you know and as you saw. Okay, to sustain our community, to pay salaries. Okay, to keep the electricity on, and things like we just take for granted. Well, it's not for granted. You have to pay. So unfortunately, that's what I'm asking you for. I'm asking you to pay to sustain our community. For the first time, people here, you do not have to give. We will get you another time. So I'm going to pass the baskets around, and thank you so much for your generosity. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, Irene. The title of the sermon is Here We Go Again, Easter, and that reflects my attitude when I found out that I was scheduled once again for Easter Sunday. It seems that, I don't know the magic of scheduling in this church, because I only preach once every month, but I seem to preach Easter all the time. And I've run out of ideas to talk about Easter. I'll be very, very open with you about that. Okay, that's the end of my whining. I did figure out as I tried to work through this, again, this problem of celebrating a holiday. We can have our own Easter tree here, celebrating something that let's face it, we fundamentally do not believe in the resurrection. And that is what this holiday, at least in history, that's what it is about. But I found out that it's about other things as well. And it's about the past and how we treat it. And rather than go into that theme and give you great detail and intellectual stimulation, I'm going to try something a little bit different this morning. I'm only going to tell stories this morning. So sit back, relax, kind of like feel like you're on the front porch with an old friend, or maybe a new friend, I don't know. And you're just enjoying your cocktail or lemonade or whatever, and you're letting the other person tell stories. Because these are my stories, and they all have to do, sometimes remotely, but I promise you they all have to do with the past and how we celebrate Easter. The first two stories, actually the first three stories, all relate to my previous church experience. I was a part-time minister in a small Unitarian Universalist congregation in upstate New York, in a very rural community. We had a very big building and a very small number of people. That was the consistent theme of that church. However, and I say this quietly, the church had a lot of money. It was called the Pullman Memorial Universalist Church. George Pullman, he had a few dollars and he built this huge church in memory of his mother and father. And he was, interestingly enough, while he was not necessarily pro-worker, he was an avid Universalist. One Sunday, it was Easter Sunday, I preached a sermon about trees and the budding of trees, the tree buds that come at this time of year as a metaphor for living with hope and living a good life. I thought that was a pretty good sermon. Not great, but pretty good. And afterwards we had coffee hour in the big parish hall. And one of the congregants who was my friend and a supporter of mine said, Dick, come on over here a second. And he took me over to the corner of the parish hall where nobody else could hear. And he said, did you forget something? And I said, gee, Ron, I don't think so. He said, well, you know, Dick, this is Easter. And you didn't even mention Easter. And I was a little flummoxed by that. It was kind of a curveball that I didn't expect. And I'm not very good at coming up with wonderful, I'm not Pat Joe, who always has an answer to every question. I just went, well, it just must have slipped my mind. I must have overlooked it. And he said, well, it's important. And that stuck with me. Here is this religious liberal, no question about his credentials of being a good Unitarian Universalist, who was telling me that somehow Easter was important. And more generally, somehow the past, the stories of the past, that aren't, certainly we're not considering to be literally true, but they're important. And that's why we dress up. I even wear the fancy vestment today. It's Easter, of course. Why not? You know, women used to wear new dresses. However, I only see one Easter bonnet in the entire congregation. I guess that particular, no, there's two. I did two. Thank you, Senator. That's sort of gone out of style. But it's a connection to the past. And how that related to me was, you know, the past continually pulls us back. Roots hold me close. Most of you know that hymn where that word appears. Roots hold me close. And while that's good for some, and it's good sometimes, it's not necessarily good all the time. But it's Easter after all, said Ron, and he was saying to me that it was time to go back to the roots, even if we don't get into a literal discussion about why exactly we're celebrating Easter. The very fact that it is part, or Passover, is part of our religious tradition is justification enough. And that story, Ron's little taking me to the corner or taking me to the woodshed, as I looked at it at the time, has stuck with me for some time. However, living in the past is not always healthy. And this is another parishioner I want to tell you about. Her name, this is fictional, it's a real person, but the name has been changed to protect the guilty. Her name was Bertha, and she was an elderly parishioner. Probably when I started, she was in her 50s, and when I left, she was in her 80s. And to talk about her, I have to talk a little bit about how I get ready for a sermon. I tend to write in small doses throughout maybe a week and a half or 2 week period. And then the Friday before the sermon, I read it all over and I edit it. And I don't have a text, a full text, I only have notes. And then Saturday I do the same thing. And for those of you who are here early on Sunday morning, you see the end of that routine, that I come with my notes in the pulpit and I go once more over what I'm going to say. That's my routine. That's how I feel comfortable. Bertha, on the other hand, was always the first person to arrive for church. And when she came in, just to give you a hint of what this lady's personality was like, she wore those old-fashioned Oxford shoes that elderly people, I don't think they still wear them, but they used to. Does everybody know what I mean by them? Tie, okay. And it didn't make any difference what the weather was. She always had her galoshes over those Oxford shoes to make sure that they stayed pristine. And she would come in that door, and I'd be working on my sermon, and I just got this routine, and she would immediately come to the front, say, "Good morning, Reverend Hood." And then she would proceed to say pretty much the same thing to me for many, many years. "Well," she would say, "this isn't how this church used to be. You know, back in the 30s, there were 200 people in the sanctuary." Well, we were lucky if we got 25 today. Pardon me. There were 200 people, and then we had a choir of 20, and Bernard played that beautiful organ, and the music filled the entire sanctuary. And her message was, "Well, not that way today, Reverend Hood. How come you're not more like Reverend Robinson?" And for a while, the first 20 times that occurred, I would get a little angry. But I got over that and started really to feel sorry for Bertha, because Bertha lived in the past. Bertha glorified everything that was old and nothing that was happening currently in her church and in her family life as well. She was a depressed and, quite frankly, sometimes miserable person. She was one of those people that you really didn't want to be around very long. And tragically, before she died, she actually left the church. She was so disillusioned that it didn't have 200 or 250 people sitting in the pew. And when she died, she did not call me or any of the other ministers who served the church. And she left, I'm sure, brokenhearted and depressed, and certainly her life was something for me that said, don't live too much in the past. That it's okay to go back, roots hold me close, but also wings have got to set me free, or else you can be a really miserable person. And quite frankly, God help me, she was. I'm missing a page. What did I do with it? Oh well, I know the story. I don't need my notes. I've been over them 3 times. I know what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about another member of my congregation. I'll call him Bob. And Bob was a very loyal member of the congregation who was always very supportive of me and other ministers who served. He was a good person, but he never joined the church. He was a good Unitarian Universalist. He believed in our values. The 7 principles were certainly congruent with his life and what he believed, but he never joined the church. And he couldn't join the church because he couldn't give up being a Roman Catholic. And that's really a problem for him. And he lived in a state of sort of uncertainty, in this spiritual conundrum. That yes, he was affiliated with us, not a member, but he could not give up the sanctity of the Roman Catholic Church. He couldn't give up the priests and the ritual and all the things that go into making a Roman Catholic experience. Unfortunately, he left the church and moved away before he died, and I'm sure by now he's passed away. And one of the mysteries of my life is, when he died, did he have a mass or a memorial service? And I'm not sure. And I hope anyway that he had both. But the moral of that story is he was so tied to the past that he couldn't get over that hump of saying, no, I don't believe X, Y, and Z. I believe A, B, and C instead. And what a tragedy when you think about it, that a man has to live with that kind of spiritual tension. And whether he ever got it resolved or not, I don't know. Enough of church. A little story from history. In 1938, Neville Chamberlain was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, our president. 1938 was also, in Europe, the rise of Nazism. Hitler was well in place. The militarization of Germany had really grown so that it was again a military power in spite of the treaty in World War I. And Hitler was starting to make moves. He had already occupied the Sudetenland, which was not really part of Germany, but people kind of let that go by because it was a German-speaking area. And he next set his sight on Czechoslovakia, on a piece, particularly a piece, again, where there were German-speaking people. And everyone was upset, and everybody knew this was not the start of something good. And Neville Chamberlain went to Munich and met with Adolf Hitler. And a new word appeared in prominence in the English language, and that word is appeasement. For those of you that have any sense of history, you might remember learning about that. And what he did was he let Hitler invade and occupy part of Czechoslovakia. But he got a pledge from Hitler on a piece of paper that that would be the end of his expansionist interests. And he came back to Britain and very famously, again, if you're a student of history, waved this paper and said, "Peace in our time." The following March, Hitler invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, and a year later he invaded Poland, and World War II, as horrible a war as ever in existence, started, because he was a ruthless, crazy dictator. 2 weeks ago, the governor of Florida, our Florida, just down the road, just down 95 from us, likely a presidential candidate, talked about what he felt about Ukraine. He didn't call it a war, and he didn't say much about Putin, but he used the term, this thing that's going on in Ukraine is, quote, a territorial dispute. He said that. He doesn't read the New York Times. He evidently does not sense the mass destruction and human suffering that's going on in that country. All because Putin wishes to occupy it. Somehow, the governor of Florida is not learning from the past. And what that says to me is that as we continue to move forward, yes, wings set us free, but we need to remember the lessons that we have learned from history. And if we haven't learned specifically that you do not deal on an equal basis with crazy, lunatic dictators, if you haven't learned that, and you don't negotiate with them either, if you haven't learned that lesson, then you have a hole in your knowledge, and you deserve to be roundly criticized. And I believe that gentleman was and is being criticized. The past is a roadmap for the future, and a roadmap and guideline for the present. On to a happier note than Ukraine. I read about it every day and I just go, oh. Most of you may know that I was not ever a full-time minister. My full-time job was I ran an assisted living facility. And we had 84 residents in our home. And we were able to take care, we did not provide nursing care, but we were able to take care of folks with mild to moderate dementia and mild to moderate agitation. Because usually we found that one followed the other, that as their dementia increased, frequently their agitation increased as well. Their coping skills were just not as great as they needed to be. I had a very creative activities director who came to me one day in my office and said, I want to try something to help that specific population. And it was actually a small group within the larger group of people who just needed some support and meals and that type of thing. I want to try and help those people. And she read an article about something called reminiscence therapy. And the idea there is that if you can get someone in that group of mildly to moderately dementia with some agitation, if you can get them talking about the past and connecting their memories, then you can help them. And my first question was, yeah, well, you know, not everybody has good memories of the past. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you're right about that, but do you remember when you were a child? Do you remember the rainy days or the sunny days? And I had to say, you know, that makes a certain amount of sense. We tend to filter out the bad memories of things that have happened, and we tend to lift up the good things that happened, the good things that gave us comfort. So we have identified a group of 6 of our residents who fit this model, fit this idea of dementia and agitation. And we actually took them, and sometimes we actually had to go get them. But rather than go into the big lounge where all the other residents might be hanging out, we took them into a small dining room. And our activities director, and I was there sometimes, but not all the time, all she would do was attempt to prod these folks to talk about the old days. And she would do so by playing music from the old tunes that these folks would remember. She would bring objects in, like the first electric iron. Somehow she got a hold of one, I don't know how. The first electric iron. Maybe some of the folks had even used the old irons that you heated on the fire, I don't know. And those things were triggers to get people to talk about their past. And the rules were, for staff, for me, but particularly for her, were just listen, just acknowledge, just reinforce. You're not there to teach them a history lesson. You are there to help them remember the good things, reminiscent. And that when they remember the good things, they will feel better about themselves. And the moral of that is that even for us who don't have dementia, although some days I question myself a little bit, looking back is okay. And in fact, looking back is comforting. Looking back to how you celebrated Easter when the minister was talking about resurrection and bodies going up, that's okay. It doesn't mean you believe that, but the memory is comforting. And in this day and age, we need all the comfort we can get. In a strange way, my activities director was a victim of her own success, because she ran this group quietly of 6, and one day another couple of residents noticed that they were serving cupcakes and went into the room. It was a public area. And what happened was that the word got out that this was a good thing, a nice thing to do. And it ended up that we ended up with 20 and 25 residents coming to this activity, and the original 6 got lost because they weren't comfortable necessarily speaking to a larger group. But we knew that, and it stuck with me, that it's okay to reminisce. It's okay to romanticize about the past, as long as you don't get stuck in it. And sometimes, even if you're not feeling well, or you're feeling agitated, or maybe you can't remember what you had for breakfast, going back to the past is a good thing to do. And so, Ron, if you're listening up there, I wish him happy Easter, as I wish the same to you. Ron, you gave me a new appreciation that we can and should recognize stories of the past, stories from, particularly for us in our culture, from our Jewish and Christian backgrounds. And it's wrong to ignore the power of the past. It's wrong to simply say, oh, forget the past. We need to live in the present, because we do so at risk of not learning what we should know from the past, and we close ourselves off from some pleasurable experiences, remembering the good times. And there's nothing wrong with remembering the good times. Roots hold me close. Wings set me free. It's easy to remember about the wings. We don't need to feel guilty about the roots. Amen.
Amen.
Our closing hymn is a familiar Easter tune, number 269. Please rise as you're willing and able.
So in closing, we want to thank all of our worship associates, David, of course, and the kitchen crew, and all the folks that helped put this together. We want to thank you all. Dick, certainly we want to thank you for your stories from Ron, Bertha, Bob, even Hitler. And we do appreciate you doing Easter again. I'd like to close with reading the words of Barbara Cheatham. And now we take our leave. Before we gather here again, may each of us bring happiness into another's life. May we each be surprised by the gifts that surround us. And may we remain together in spirit till the hour we meet again. One bit of wisdom comes from a publication, Getting Old is Not Easy. If you can't think of a word, say, I forgot the English word for it. That way people will think you're bilingual instead of an idiot. Final remarks.
I have to follow that? It's not fair. The closing words are from the writings of a gentleman named Alex Holt. For all those who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus or the miracle of Passover, may this day be another affirmation of love and promise. For all those who see the eternal story of new spring and life beginning anew, may you breathe deeply of a season of promise and hope. For all who are experiencing despair or hopelessness, may you find in the darkness or depression a doorway to light and warmth that offers you freedom. For all of us, together we can do what no one isolated person can do. Rolling the heavy stone aside reminds us that we are far more powerful than we could ever be on our own. Our offering of strong hands to help is our prayer, and this prayer can be made real. Let us begin once again to love.
Will you all please join me in extinguishing the chalice? The words are in your order of service. While we extinguish this flame